Imagine your company's biggest operational bottleneck. You know the exact one I'm talking about. It's that sprawling, soul-crushing process that normally takes, what, like 72 hours of just agonizing manual review?
Oh yeah, where you have a whole room of highly paid professionals just pushing paper.
Exactly. Just cross-referencing spreadsheets and praying they don't miss a tiny detail that could, derail the entire week. But now I want you to imagine an AI system completely resolving that specific bottleneck in just 8 hours.
Which is incredible.
Right. And it doesn't just do it faster, it does it with a higher degree of accuracy than your dedicated human team could ever manage on their best day. So what would that kind of velocity do for your bottom line?
I mean, it is the ultimate corporate dream. But what's critical for anyone listening to understand right now is that this isn't some science fiction projection for the next decade. This is the absolute reality for businesses operating right now in 2026.
Yeah, the tech is already here.
It is. We're looking at a market landscape this year where agentic AI is projected to handle over 60% of enterprise workflow automation tasks. The technology is fully capable today. But there is a massive roadblock sitting right in the middle of this progress.
A fear factor.
Exactly. 78% of organizations are absolutely terrified to deploy it. They are leaving millions of euros on the table, just sitting on the sidelines, purely because of governance concerns specifically, navigating the newly enforced EU AI Act.
That is a staggering gap, honestly, between capability and courage. You have a technology that can fundamentally rewire and supercharger operations, yet almost 80% of enterprise leaders are too scared to touch it.
Right.
So our mission for this deep dive into the source material is to bridge that exact gap. Today, we're pulling insights from EtherLink, which is a Dutch AI consulting firm, and we're going to explore how European businesses, particularly those operating in the massive innovation hub of Rotterdam, are actually harnessing these autonomous AI agents right now.
Safely and legally.
Yes, safely, legally, and profitably without running into multi-million-euro compliance penalties.
And Rotterdam really serves as the perfect lens for this entire discussion. You're looking at Europe's most bustling international port city. You have massive logistics operations, complex supply chain networks, advanced healthcare sectors, all converging in one geographic location.
The massive testing ground.
It really is. The businesses there are actively figuring out how to evolve past simple, static chatbots and integrate these highly complex, autonomous decision makers into their daily workflows.
Well, before we go any further, I feel like we need to clarify the jargon here, because agentic AI sounds like one of those buzzwords thrown around in a boardroom just to sound cutting edge.
Oh, absolutely.
So if a traditional chatbot is basically an interactive corporate dictionary, meaning it only speaks when spoken to, and it gives you a predefined text answer to a predefined question, an AI agent is an entirely different beast. I like to think of it as a hyper-efficient intern.
That's a great way to picture it.
Right, but crucially, it's an intern you have given a corporate credit card to and direct, unfiltered access to your core enterprise systems.
Which is a terrifying thought for any CTO.
Exactly. You give this intern a digital key card to your ERP, your enterprise resource planning software, where you hold all your financial and inventory data. You give them access to your CRM containing all your sensitive customer sales records, and your TMS, the transportation management system that actually orchestrates the physical movement of your freight.
Right.
It doesn't just answer questions. It autonomously breaks down complex goals, makes decisions on the fly, and physically executes actions across multiple platforms.
That intern analogy is incredibly accurate, especially the part about the corporate credit card and system access, because that autonomy, the ability to act without being prompted, is where all the financial value lies. But it's also the exact origin point of the fear.
Yeah, because they're off doing things on their own.
Exactly. But if we look at the raw numbers first, the financial incentives to figure this out are just too big for any business to ignore. According to McKinsey's 2025 data, enterprises that actually deploy these agentic systems are reporting 35 to 40% productivity gains in their knowledge work sectors.
Wow. 35 to 40%.
Yeah. And specifically in Rotterdam's logistics sector, operators are seeing 25 to 30% cost reductions in their port operations almost immediately.
And when you drill down into the unit economics in the source material, it gets even more dramatic. It notes that the average cost per interaction right now, when handled by a human worker, sits between 15 and 25 euros.
Which adds up incredibly fast.
It does. But when you hand that exact same interaction over to a well-designed AI agent, That cost plummets to just 50 cents to €2.
Exactly. The margin improvement is literally revolutionary.
But I have to stop you there and push back on this a bit, because if I am a CTO or a logistics director listening to this, and I see a €25 interaction cost drop to 50 cents, I am deploying that technology tomorrow morning. The financial case is closed.
You would think so.
Right, so why are so many companies failing to adopt this? Forrester's 2025 data points out a massive paradox in our sources. It shows that 65% of agentic AI pilots succeed brilliantly in testing, but only 18% actually scale to production.
18%.
Yeah, that is a brutal failure rate for something so profitable. Why does this hyper-efficient intern get fired right after the probation period? What is the actual physical barrier here?
Well, the physical barrier is that the probation period happens in a sterile sandbox, and production happens in the real world. Specifically, a real world heavily regulated by the EU AI Act.
Ah, right, the regulation piece.
This is what we call the compliance cliff. The EU AI Act physically classifies many of these enterprise systems as high risk. So when you're dealing with critical infrastructure like Rotterdam's port operations or healthcare triage or even employment allocation, the AI isn't just generating a marketing email.
It's making real decisions.
Exactly. It's making mathematical decisions that affect human lives, physical safety, and international trade regulations.
So the regulators aren't treating this like a software glitch. They're treating it like a critical safety failure.
Yes.
And the stakes for getting that wrong are existential for a business. The EU AI Act can levy penalties of up to €30 million or 6% of a company's global annual turnover, whichever is higher.
Whichever is higher. That's the scary part.
We are looking at a scenario where a mid-sized Rotterdam logistics firm could easily face a €2.4 million fine just because the AI they used to clear customs didn't have the proper logging mechanisms. That isn't a slap on the wrist. That is a bankruptcy event.
It is the ultimate boardroom nightmare. But, this is where the dynamic gets genuinely fascinating. You would naturally assume that this incredibly strict regulatory environment would stifle innovation.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
Right. But the convergence of GDPR and the new EU AI Act is actively creating a massive competitive moat for European startups and tech providers.
I'm trying to picture how that works in practice. Because usually, heavy regulation is viewed as a barrier to entry, not a strategic advantage.
Think about the underlying architecture of the major U.S. tech platforms. To run their massive AI models, they often require continuous cloud data transfers across the Atlantic to servers in California or Virginia.
Oh, I see where this is going, yeah.
In a post-GDPR world, and especially under the intense scrutiny of the new AI Act, sending sensitive European port logistics data or private healthcare records to a U.S. server to be processed by an AI introduces a level of legal risk that most European enterprise lawyers simply will not sign off on.
It's a non-starter.
Completely. But European providers like Amsterdam and Rotterdam-based AetherLink and their Etherbot products, they're designing these systems from the ground up with data sovereignty built into the code.
Oh.
They offer on-premise, EU-only data residency. The data physically never leaves the continent.
Okay, that makes total logical sense. If you are handling highly sensitive international trade data, you cannot have it bouncing through external servers just to get an AI to read an invoice.
Exactly.
But even if the data stays physically in Europe, you still have the black box problem because these agents act autonomously. They are constantly iterating, making micro decisions, and chaining complex tasks together without human input.
Which creates a massive data trail.
Right. So if an EU auditor knocks on your door, how do you even begin to explain the logic of what an autonomous AI did 3 weeks ago at 2 in the morning?
Well, that exact problem is why the AI lead architecture approach was developed. The source material from AetherLink really emphasizes this with their AetherMind strategy consulting. You cannot just buy an off-the-shelf AI model, plug it into your enterprise API, and hope for the best.
You need a strategy.
Right. The AI lead architect is a specialized role that ensures explainability, data minimization, and dynamic user consent are literally woven into the agent's software architecture from day one.
So what does that actually look like on a server level? Like, how do you mathematically prove the AI's logic?
Every single autonomous action the agent takes must trace back to a cryptographically logged reasoning chain.
Okay.
The system is engineered to operate on the absolute minimum amount of data required to execute the specific job. So when that auditor sits down in your office and asks why the AI denied a crucial medical shipment at 2 a.m., you don't just hand them a massive unreadable data dump or a black box output.
That would definitely fail the audit.
Exactly. The architecture generates a crystal clear step-by-step log of the AI's mathematical logic, showing exactly which data points triggered the denial.
Which is the perfect bridge from the theory of compliance into a massive practical application. Let's look at the Rotterdam Port Authority case study from the source material, because this perfectly illustrates the stakes.
Oh, this is a great example.
We are talking about a port that physically processes over 14 million TEUs every single year. For anyone unfamiliar, a TEU is a 20-foot equivalent unit. It's the standard metric for those massive shipping containers you see on cargo ships.
They are everywhere in Rotterdam.
Right. And before they brought in AI, their customs clearance was a catastrophic bottleneck. You had human workers doing manual document review for millions of containers, which was causing 48 to 72-hour delays just to get freight off the docks.
And the financial cost of that is huge.
Yeah, if a human worker made a simple tariff miscalculation during that rush, that single error was costing shippers upwards of 50,000 euros per incident in fines and holding fees.
The scale of the data processing problem there is just immense. You have millions of containers, manifests written in a dozen different languages, and incredibly complex, constantly shifting international regulatory codes.
A total nightmare for a human.
It is the perfect environment for a manual system to completely break down under its own weight.
And here's the solution they deployed using AetherLink's EtherDV development team. The Port Authority brought in an AI lead architect design system. Crucially, they didn't just build a smart chatbot, they built multimodal agents.
Multimodal is the key word there.
Yeah, these agents are autonomously processing bills of lading, complex commercial invoices, and origin certificates across 12 different languages simultaneously.
Just churning through the paperwork.
Exactly. They are doing the initial triage, classifying shipments by risk using decades of historical patterns, and instantly flagging anomalies like a price mismatch between the invoice and the declared value or the presence of restricted goods. It took that agonizing 72-hour manual process and crushed it down to an average of just 8 hours.
That speed is incredible, but we really need to dig into the governance aspect of this deployment. Because the truly remarkable part isn't just the speed, it's the fact that this massive, complex system passed its first EU AI Act compliance audit with 0 nonconformance findings.
Zero.
In an environment that strict, that is practically unheard of for a system handling international trade.
I was actually wondering about that when reading the deep dive materials. How is that physically possible? If the AI is making millions of autonomous decisions, mathematically it has to make an error eventually. Did they just build an impossibly perfect algorithm?
No, the algorithm isn't perfect. What they did was architecturally much smarter. They utilized what is called a strategic human-in-the-loop design.
Okay, human in the loop.
Yeah, they recognized early on that the goal shouldn't be full 100% machine autonomy. The AI agents did all the exhausting heavy lifting. They handled the document extraction, the translation, the risk flagging, and the OCR.
And just to clarify for everyone, OCR is optical character recognition. So the AI isn't just reading clean digital text from a PDF. It's taking a scanned image of a smeared ink stamp on a crumpled bill of lading from a warehouse in Shanghai, turning that image into readable data and mapping it to EU tariff codes.
Exactly. The AI does all of that incredibly dense analytical work. It builds a comprehensive risk profile for the container. But, and this is the key to passing the audit, the final legally binding decision to clear a high-risk container was still executed by a human customs officer.
Ah, I see. So the AI basically acts as the world's fastest, most thorough legal researcher.
Right.
It prepares an airtight brief, highlights all the risks, and puts it on the desk. But the human being still has to physically sign the check.
Precisely. The human makes the final decision, but they are making it based on the AI's heavily vetted, mathematically logged reasoning.
That's a huge time saver.
It really is. This
Yeah.
architectural choice drastically reduced the human workload by 40% because all the routine, low-risk triage was fully automated. But it maintained that absolute critical layer of human oversight that the EU AI Act demands for high-risk systems. It is a brilliant, highly pragmatic balance of achieving massive scale while guaranteeing safety.
For anyone listening who is terrified of an upcoming EU audit, this right here is your blueprint. They prove that you don't need unchecked autonomy to get the ROI, and the cost savings from this approach are undeniable.
The numbers are wild.
Yeah, the case study notes support authorities saved 3.2 million euros annually just from reduced holding delays, error prevention, and optimizing their labor force. But this technology isn't just about moving shipping containers faster.
No, it applies everywhere.
Right, to prove how versatile these multimodal agents are, the source material also highlights a Rotterdam healthcare case study. They deployed multimodal AI avatars for patient triage, and the mechanics of this are wild.
Oh, this one is fascinating.
We aren't just talking about a voice on a phone. We're talking about visual AI avatars that match real-time lip sync, read patient gestures, and speak 4 different languages: Dutch, English, Turkish, and Polish, to perfectly match the city's demographics.
The technological leap there is profound. Multimodal capabilities mean the AI isn't just processing text. It is simultaneously analyzing voice intonation, visual inputs, and contextual history.
Right, and I was reading up on how it actually reads those gestures. It isn't just looking at broad movements. It uses spatial computing and computer vision to map dozens of facial anchor points in real time.
So it picks up on the micro-expressions.
Exactly. So if a patient verbally says, "My pain isn't that bad," but their micro-expressions and body language show severe distress, the AI mathematically registers that discrepancy and instantly flags it for the triage nurse.
That's incredible.
They deployed these avatars and reduced patient wait times by 40%, all while maintaining accuracy rates that match veteran human nurses.
It is a fantastic demonstration of how combining voice, video, and deep context can completely revolutionize customer service without sacrificing the empathy or the extreme accuracy required in a high-stakes environment like a hospital triage ward.
It is incredible, but let's bring this back down to earth for a second because we have to talk about the failure modes.
Yeah.
We have praised our hyper-efficient intern, but what happens when that intern makes a catastrophic mistake?
Which happens.
Because we've given them access to everything. I'm picturing a very vivid scenario, what engineers call a cross-system side effect.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine your AI agent is tasked with a simple, routine cleanup job in your CRM. It's just fixing a typo in a major client's corporate address. But because that agent has autonomous linked access to your ERP and your TMS, it logically deduces, oh, the address changed. I should update the logistics system to reflect the new location.
Right.
And that tiny, well-intentioned data shift in the CRM accidentally triggers an automated purchase order for 10,000 shipping containers to be routed to a small bakery in downtown Rotterdam.
That is a very real and very terrifying possibility when you start dealing with deeply interconnected enterprise systems. You are describing the exact reason why you cannot just connect an Aetherbot to your API and hope for the best.
Yeah.
To prevent your intern from accidentally buying 10,000 shipping containers, the architecture requires what is known as a 3-layer safety model.
Walk me through how those layers actually function mechanically, because if I am building this, I definitely want to ensure that bakery scenario is physically impossible.
Layer 1 is the design layer. This is about strict architectural constraints. You explicitly code hard boundaries into the agent's authority using API token gating.
So hard limits.
Yes. The agent is physically blocked from executing high-stakes financial transactions or mass routing changes without explicit secondary authorization from a human.
Okay, so going back to our intern analogy, it isn't just taking away the corporate credit card. It's like putting a strict, hard-coded spending limit on that card, where any API request over, say, 500 euros is physically rejected by the server unless it has a manager's cryptographic digital signature attached to it.
Exactly. The system mathematically cannot execute the action. Then you move to layer 2, the monitoring layer.
Okay, how does that work?
This is happening constantly in real time. It is scanning for anomalies, but more importantly, it is continuously monitoring the AI's internal confidence levels. Every single time the AI generates or plans an action, it calculates a mathematical probability of its own accuracy based on its training weights.
So it knows when it's guessing.
It's exactly. Let's say the AI encounters a highly complex edge case customs regulation that hasn't mapped before. If that internal probability score drops below a hard threshold of 0.85 or 85% confidence, the system is programmed to automatically halt the process and escalate the entire ticket to a human expert.
That 85% threshold is such a smart, tangible safeguard. It prevents the AI from hallucinating or just making something up when it encounters a blind spot in critical contexts.
Right, it forces it to ask for help.
If the math says you aren't absolutely sure, the system physically stops and asks the boss. So layer 1 stops the bad action, layer 2 catches the confusion in real time. But what happens after the fact? Because if the EU regulators come knocking 3 months later, a real-time monitor doesn't give me a paper trail to defend my business.
That is precisely what Layer 3 is for,
Mm.
the governance layer. This circles back to what we discussed with the Port Authority's audit success. It involves mandated human oversight checkpoints and deeply embedded immutable audit trails.
The logs.
Yes, if the AI does make a mistake, or if a malicious actor attempts a prompt injection attack to manipulate the agent's instructions, this layer ensures you have the permanent historical data logs required to trace the exact source of the error.
So you can figure out what went wrong.
Exactly. Roll back the transaction cleanly. And most importantly, physically prove to regulators that you have absolute control over your enterprise systems.
It sounds like an incredibly intense amount of architectural work to set up on the front end, but also entirely non-negotiable if you want to sleep at night as a business leader.
It is non-negotiable. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, looking out through the rest of 2026 and beyond, European businesses need to be incredibly strategic about how they build their foundational architecture.
Because the market is changing fast.
Very fast. The agentic AI market is consolidating rapidly. We're going to see massive global cloud providers aggressively trying to dominate these orchestration platforms, locking enterprise customers into their specific ecosystems through deep proprietary API connectivity.
Vendor lock-in. It is the classic enterprise trap.
Always is.
You spend millions building your entire company's workflow around one single provider's proprietary AI ecosystem, and then a year later, they double their API pricing or they alter their data privacy policy.
And you're stuck.
Completely trapped because migrating away would break your entire operation.
Precisely. Which is why enterprises in Rotterdam, and really any business leader listening to this right now, must aggressively prioritize open standards and vendor-agnostic architecture today. You need the structural flexibility to cleanly swap out the underlying AI models as the technology inevitably evolves.
Without having to start over.
Right, without having to tear down and rebuild your entire multi-million euro compliance and safety infrastructure from scratch.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you sit down to look at your own organization's technology roadmap? We have covered a massive amount of ground today, from the core mechanics of autonomous agents and computer vision to the legal cliff of the EU AI Act and the practical reality of deploying these systems at scale without going bankrupt.
Still a lot to process.
It is. Let's distill all of this down. Looking at all the source material we've reviewed today from AetherLink, what is your absolute #1 takeaway?
My #1 takeaway is that business leaders need an immediate shift in mindset. AI compliance is no longer just a frustrating legal requirement or a tedious box to tick to keep the EU auditors happy. It is a highly profitable competitive advantage.
How so?
Well, the raw data shows that an initial governance and architecture setup, which might cost a business between 50 and 150,000 euros up front, actually amortizes in just 7 to 9 months through massive operational efficiency gains and penalty avoidance.
That's a fast ROI.
Very fast. If you build it safely with EU-first data sovereignty from day one, you aren't just protecting yourself defensively. You are actively positioning your company to scale automation in ways your non-compliant competitors simply cannot legally match.
Turning a defensive legal requirement into an offensive market strategy, I think that is brilliant. For me, my #1 takeaway revolves entirely around the human element. The underlying technology clearly works. The McKinsey productivity numbers and the Rotterdam port processing speeds objectively prove that. But the human being remains the ultimate irreplaceable safeguard. You do not need full, unchecked machine autonomy to achieve massive, profitable scale. Implementing that human-in-the-loop design is the secret to finally getting out of pilot purgatory.
This is the only way forward, right?
Let the AI do the exhausting data mining, the language translation, the risk flagging. Let it turn 72 hours of brutal manual labor into 8 hours of automated prep work. But keep your highly trained human experts at the finish line to make the final binding call.
Exactly.
It builds internal trust, it perfectly satisfies the regulators, and it mathematically protects your business from disaster.
It is a strategic partnership, not a wholesale replacement. And that dynamic leads me to a final thought I want to leave everyone with, something to seriously consider as you evaluate your own company's AI adoption strategy.
Okay, what is it?
Right now, in 2026, the scarcest resource in the entire AI space isn't compute power, and it isn't even high-quality data. The absolute scarcest resource on the market is governance talent.
Interesting.
Anyone with a budget can buy access to a powerful AI model, but very few organizations actually know how to deploy it safely in a heavily regulated environment. So ask yourself, does your company currently employ an AI lead architect who deeply understands both the bleeding edge technology and the strict legal nuances of the EU AI Act?
Hmm.
Or are you just handing the corporate credit card to the hyper-efficient intern and hoping for the best?
That is the 30 million euro penalty question, isn't it? You
Right.
definitely do not want to be relying on hope when those are the financial stakes. But before we wrap up entirely, I want you to consider this one final thought moving forward. We have talked endlessly today about AI replacing routine labor and speeding up processes.
Right.
But as these autonomous agents take over the actual execution of tasks, the human role fundamentally shifts. Your employees go from being the doers of the work to being the auditors of the machine's work.
That's a huge transition.
It is. If your entire workforce's primary daily job becomes verifying the mathematical logic of autonomous agents, how does that fundamentally change your company culture, your hiring practices, and your management style in the next 5 years? It is a massive structural shift, and it is something you need to be thinking about right now as you build your roadmap. For more AI insights, visit etherlink.ai.